right, so welcome to this episode of MTMM Radio. It's a very exciting episode for us because we are bringing on our newest nutritionist, our newest member of the MTMM Nutrition Team, Clare Green. So we're really excited to introduce her to you guys. She's got a very interesting background and history when it comes to both training and nutrition. And she has some very specific areas of interest as well that we want to touch on today. And hopefully these resonate with some of you guys. And if you ever have any questions or want to reach out to Clare herself, we'd love for you to do that. So get ready to see a lot more of Clare and to be able to learn a lot from her. She has a wide a wealth of knowledge that we're very excited for her to bring to the table. So yeah, welcome Clare. Thank you for coming on the MTMM radio show today. So do you want to just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you met MTMM and kind of how this all has started?
Yeah, sure. So I am 44 years old and I'm a mum of 3 boys. And yeah, which keeps me kind of busy. That's my priority. So I heard about MTMM through some guys that I've been training with, and my career recently has been steering me more and more towards nutrition. That's where my heart lies. That's where my true interests are. So I got in touch with with Ben and Kat, and we had a great chat, and we were just so aligned on so many things. The fit just felt natural. So it's so exciting to be a part of it.
Yeah. And what were you doing before you met Ben and Kat primarily?
So PT and nutrition as well, but mostly PT. So I started PTing 13 years ago after the birth of my second child. And that really, I think my journey really started at uni, because at uni I read biology. So I've always had a real interest in the human body. Played a lot of sport. So it was just a big part of my life, like the human body, how to train it well, how to feed it well for optimum performance. So then PT just felt like the natural path for me to take. So I've been PTing back in the UK when I lived there. I ran a huge outdoor boot camp business there, so I got to work with an enormous demographic of people, which was amazing because it gave me so much experience. And then when I moved back to Australia, I got involved with CrossFit, and I've been heavily involved in CrossFit ever since, coaching, competing myself, which is an amazing experience because of that broad demographic that CrossFit brings to the table. Yeah.
And what is your competition experience with CrossFit?
I started out doing the open and having absolutely no idea what I was doing. But my first coach just said, "You're just doing it." But I really enjoyed it in a weird kind of way. I think we're wired differently as CrossFitters.
Yes.
So then it just started doing local comps, and then the open I started to take a bit more seriously. And as I entered the Masters division, it became my goal to qualify for the next stage, the top 200 in the world, which I managed to do, I think, 3 years in a row. So that gave me a lot more insight into what's required to take it to that next level.
When it comes especially to from everything outside of training.
Yeah, especially for a masters athlete who's juggling probably career, kids, and hormones, depending on what age you're at. So there's a lot going on for a masters athlete, I believe. Yeah.
And in terms of the demographic that you typically work with when it comes to PTing, and if you have touched on any nutrition things as well, what is the most typical demographic that you do work with, or if there's a number of different demographics?
Yeah, well, I have worked with a huge variety of people, people competing at a high level, but I would say majority of my clients are middle-aged, or certainly mid-30s onwards, kind of typically childbearing ages, and through to menopause and post-menopause. Yeah, and I think that's probably because they can relate to me, having, been through the same trials and tribulations and the same juggling acts, but still having strong goals in place. So yeah, that's definitely my demographic. I can relate to them, they can relate to me, so it's just a natural affinity.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. I think that's a really important connection to have, because it's one thing to look at things theoretically and what things should look like on paper, and okay, you should be eating this much and avoid these things, but when you're actually put in the situation yourself, you really start to realize how that plays out in a more practical sense. And I think that being able to have that connection with your coach is really, really, really important.
Yeah.
So I think that is really great. And I don't know if any of you have read one of the recent articles on our blog, but it was actually written by Clare. So it is talking about the age spread. So when I first heard that word, I didn't really know what it meant. So do you want to start out by just kind of defining what age spread is and how that relates to your clients or some of your clients?
Yep. So middle-age spread. It's basically a term that we give to weight gain around the middle of your body, and that tends to occur around middle age, around the same time as menopause, so mid-40s to mid-50s it happens. And I think a lot of people think it's their destiny or their genetics, oh, I'm 40 now, I'm approaching menopause, I'm just going to gain weight around my middle. And yeah, there are influencing factors that can certainly make that happen, but it's not your destiny, and there is so many things you can do to avoid it. I think a lot of people believe it's unavoidable, so they give up. It just becomes too overwhelming with everything else that comes along with middle age. It can just be too overwhelming to even know where to start. And that's where I really like to help people, is just to really break it down and make them realize it's not as difficult as they might seem, as it might seem. There are some really easy fixes that can get you on the path to avoiding middle age spread, or at least minimizing it, because it's important. It comes with huge health risk, long-term health risk. So it's important to educate people as well about the long-term health goals of staying on top of that middle-age spread.
Right. And what are some of the protocols that you would say to put in place as preventative measures? So we'll start with the preventative side of things, and then we'll talk about in a little bit what happens if you get to that point and you're just a little bit too overwhelmed and really don't know what to do at that point. But let's bring it back to what you can do to prevent this middle-age spread, and maybe some common misconceptions about it as well.
Yeah. I think, well, from a nutrition standpoint, the best thing we can do is to keep up our protein intake, because as you get older, the muscle protein synthesis, so the ability to grow and retain muscle, just gets a lot harder and a lot more resistant to stimulus like protein and resistance training. So it's really important that you keep that protein intake high. And also a healthy diet, goes without saying, but a diet that's rich in fruit and vegetables, fiber, because there's such a great link now to show that fiber diversity is good for your gut microbiome, and that has a really good influence on your hormone health and mental health. So that's where I would start with nutrition. And then training as well, I think, is really important. Resistance training and plyometrics to, again, keep up that muscle mass. We see a huge decline in muscle mass at middle age. So again, resistance training is going to help maintain that muscle mass. Plyometrics as well for bone health is a great way to address joint issues that might also occur at the same time. And rest as well. We can, when we're feeling overwhelmed, I think I have to train every day, and actually no, we don't. Rest is even more important to allow bodies to recover and adapt.
Yeah, and that also aligns with what we've been kind of preaching for a little while too, is that consistency over perfection, right? So not only does our body need that rest from a physical standpoint to actually rest and recover, but as well mentally, we're going to need to rest at some point so that we don't burn ourselves out, right? And we don't try to run ourselves into the ground by going 100% of the time and then down to zero, right? Rather maintaining at about an 80%. making sure that we're integrating that rest in and that it's programmed for us too, right? It really helps, I find, if someone is guiding you and helping you choose when you need to rest and when you should not.
Yeah,
Kind of giving
absolutely.
mind as well.
Yeah, it's completely counterproductive. Like if I have a client come to me for training, for example, who is exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
it would be stupid of me to put them through a tough workout, because they're just going to find themselves even more exhausted, even more stress put on their body.
Mm-hmm.
So then what are they going to do? Probably take even more time off in the long run, and probably make poor food choices because they're tired. So yeah, rest is a big deal, should be paid a lot more attention to. And I would expect a coach, if you were having remote programming, a coach to be plugging those days in for you, and you've got to listen, you've got to do it.
Mm-hmm. Just as important as getting into the gym and doing your workouts, right, is adhering to those rest days.
Yes.
So you touched a little bit on the fact that people try and blame certain aspects like of their health and their hormones, or blame the middle age spread on their hormones. So how much of that, how much truth is there to that, and what could other causes be? Is it just aging in general, or are there specific things that come with aging that could potentially be causing it?
Yeah, well, it's really quite complex, especially for women.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with the guys though. For the guys, there's a drop in testosterone, and we need testosterone to build muscle, so we drop our testosterone, and then our muscle mass decreases as well. So that is accompanied by feelings of fatigue. Perhaps your mood isn't so good. Fatigue and a low mood is again going to lead to lack of motivation and poorer food choices. So you very quickly find yourself in a calorie surplus, eating too much, moving too little.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not motivated, you've got a stressful job, probably the last thing you want to do when you're stressed and tired is go and work out after a hard day at the office. Mm-hmm. So testosterone has a multifaceted effect for the guys, but also, like I was saying, it does affect your motivation and your mood. So we do tend to slow down. People say your metabolism slows down. It doesn't. You do. You slow down. We just do. Think about how active we were, even when the kids were young. You can't blame parenting either. When the kids were young, you're running around like crazy after them. But, fast forward a few years, you're not running around after your kids anymore. You might be playing taxi, but generally we're sitting a lot of the time. So we slow down. Our metabolism doesn't. So let's stop blaming that. And then for the women, it's certainly more complex. Again, we see a decline in hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And estrogen regulates our energy balance, and it's linked to fat distribution. So we can blame that a little bit for the middle-age spread. And again, a decline in those hormones can play havoc with your mood and your energy levels. So again, you're going to be not getting to the gym as much, not moving as much, and feeling tired and making the wrong food choices. So similar effects, but it's just a little bit more complex for the women. Right. Yeah, but again, same thing. Metabolism doesn't slow down for the girls either.
Mm-hmm. And there's specific protocols that can be put in place to try and lessen the effects of the hormonal changes that you are going through when you are approaching the middle-aged and potentially at risk for the middle-age spread. We do have a handout that if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about menopause, the changes that your hormones are going through, the effects that you can face and how to manage them to an extent. We have some information on that. So just send us an email you can send me an email, Maggie@marriedtomymacros.com, and I'd be happy to share that with you and answer any other questions that you do have. So taking it a little bit further. So now if somebody has found themselves, they are approaching that middle age and they are finding themselves just, let's say, overweight and a little bit overwhelmed, like you were saying, and that is the type of client that you really enjoy helping. What exactly does it look like for one when a client is coming to you looking for help? Like what are the signs that that they are pretty overwhelmed and that you are able to help them?
Yeah. Well, very often it happens over time without them necessarily realizing or wanting to acknowledge that it's happening. They might catch a reflection of themselves, or they might see a picture of themselves, or go to the GP for a general health check, told them they need to lose weight. So it's often a shock that brings them to me, and they'll describe themselves as feeling overwhelmed, because they just don't know where to start, because everywhere we're surrounded, social media, we're surrounded with do this, do keto, do this, and it is overwhelming, the information that's given to you out there. So I love working with this type of client because it gives me an opportunity to get rid of all the nonsense for a start, all of those stupid ideas that are thrown at them through Facebook, and give them knowledge, because knowledge is power. So just empower them with really basic things to start with. So I like to use a layering effect with people. So if somebody comes to me feeling overwhelmed and overweight, I would give them one thing to practice in week one, and that might be meditate. It might be drink 2-3 liters of water a day, sleep for an extra hour at night. And once they've got that nailed and it's become a habit, then we'll add something else. And then we'll add something else. So we just layer it, so they just feel more and more empowered, and in control of things as well, and realize, actually, this isn't that scary. I don't have to be overwhelmed. I can manage this. I can manage to sleep another hour. I can manage to drink another liter of water. And then we can start delving a little bit deeper once they're ready for it, and start looking at their nutrition more closely. Yeah.
And when it's somebody else who's looking at what needs to be a priority at this time too, that's really helpful from a nutrition coach, right?
Yeah.
And I think too, I really like the approach that you do take with the layering effect, because people are often, like you said, so overwhelmed and concerned that hopping on a nutrition program is going to mean a complete overhaul of their life in order to see those changes that they want to see, right? And that's just not the case. That layering effect, what happens then is you're making these small changes very slowly, but over a long period of time. Then you're going to look back in 6 months and you will realize that you've made such a significant change, but it will have not felt like it was that significant change, right? Because you're doing it so gradually.
And it's achievable. It's achievable then, so people will stay on track.
Exactly. They'll be able to be consistent. They're not looking to be perfect right off the bat with every single aspect of their health and nutrition, but rather just implementing little changes as they go along, so that they can foster that consistency.
And I think there's a misconception out there that if you consult the help of a nutritionist, that you're going to be hit with this huge plan and a complete overhaul, which is very scary for a lot of people. It's a much easier not to do that in many people's minds. So it's good to get rid of that misconception that it's not the approach, especially from us guys, is just not like that.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us. If there's any, I know we touched on a few of the small kind of takeaways I think that people could potentially apply to their own situations, but is there any like little tips, tricks that you would like to share with those listening? Maybe simple steps that can be taken initially right off the bat if they do find themselves feeling like they are overwhelmed with being overweight and not feeling like they are at their healthiest, for those listening in a similar situation?
I think don't wake up on a Monday morning and decide you're going to give up everything.
Or January 1st.
Because by Wednesday it won't be happening. So I would seek the help of a coach who has worked with people like yourself, and let them help you, let them guide you to set some realistic goals, and communicate with them as well. Make sure what they've set you is achievable. Don't just sit there and go, I can do X, Y, and Z this week, where really you're thinking you can't. If you can only manage one thing at a time, then just go with that, because those baby steps are what's going to get you the end result.
I think that's really important. I mean, the coach is only there to help guide you with your goals. They don't care if you, well, they do care if you if you do achieve your goals, but from a completely different perspective, right? They care for you. So if you're just trying to impress them, or you're afraid to be upfront and honest with them about your abilities and your confidence in being able to reach those goals, that is, like you said, something that really strongly needs to be communicated, or else the chances of success decrease quite significantly.
You won't be able to adhere to it, and we all know that adherence is the route to success. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. Super excited to have you on the team. We've been waiting to make this announcement for a really long time. So really happy that we are able to share your knowledge with everyone. And for anyone who's interested in working with Clare, or if anybody has any questions for Clare, her link will be below to book in an initial consult with her. And I'll also drop her email there too. So if you want to send her an email, if you just have any general questions, feel free to do so. We also have a small bio up on our website about Clare as well, so you can follow that and take a little read as well. So thank you so much, Clare.
Thank you, Maggie. Thanks. It's exciting. Thanks.
All right, we'll catch you guys in the next one.